What if I told you that the Kathmandu Valley once lay underwater until an awakened being, a Bodhisattva named Manjushree, came and cut through the mountains, creating rivers that allowed the water of this lake to drain? How did this hill, now crowned by a stupa, a Buddhist dome-shaped shrine, come to hold the Buddhist world and the universe itself? How did it become an important pilgrimage site for people across the Buddhist world, from Tibet to India? How does a hill on the western side of Kathmandu Valley contain so many stories of visiting Buddhas, drought, and a child eating demoness? This is UNESCO World Heritage Site known as Swayambhu. While pilgrims know it as Swayambhu, most tourists know it simply as the Monkey Temple, a name that for locals can sound as strange as calling the Eiffel Tower the Iron Tower. The Sanskrit name literally means the self-arisen. It is the place where a previous Buddha known as Vipassana Buddha is said to have planted a seed, which is said to have grown into beautiful lotus. Then a chaitya consisting of crystals and having the forms of light arose from its own accord. The home of jinas, the basis of 5 Tathagatas, as the support for sacred qualities of awakening, as adorned with all the marks of Buddhahood, as bearing all beautiful objects, and as bearing the jewel of the true. It houses 5 transcendental Buddhas who each embody qualities which collectively constitute Buddhahood. The light shining from the site came to be seen as consisting of 5 rays: white, blue, yellow, red, and green in color, in accordance with the colors of 5 Buddhas. But Swayambhu is not an ordinary stupa or chaitya. Across the Buddhist world, from India to Indonesia, stupas such as Great Vajrayana Monument at Borobudur derive their sanctity either from relics enshrined within them or from intricate mandalas ritually projected into their structure by human priests. Swayambhu, by contrast, is said to owe its sacredness to no human act. According to Swayambhu Purana, a collection of texts explaining the origin of the site, it marks the very spot where the principle of Buddhahood itself, personified as Adi Buddha, manifested spontaneously of its own accord. That independence, its arising without human mediation, is what sets Swayambhu apart from every other stupa in the Buddhist world. At the top of the main staircase to Swayambhu stands a massive vajra resting on a mandala base, an image that encodes the structure of the site. The vajra is an important Tantric Buddhist symbol representing the indestructible, diamond-like, and irresistible, thunderbolt-like force of awakening. The mandala beneath it, an architectural item necessarily in every Newar Buddhist monastery, is associated with Vajra Dhatu, or Diamond Thunderbolt realm, the symbolic universe of 5 transcendental Buddhas: Vairocana at the center, Akshova in the east, Ratnasambhava in the south, Amitabha in the west, and Amoksiddhi in the north, whose bodies, colors, and directions together constitute the totality of awakening. The Vajra and Mandala at the entrance thus diagram the unfolding of Buddhahood that Swayambhu itself is said to embody. But Swayambhu is more than a monument. It is a world of stories, of a goddess who once stole children and now protects them, of secret chambers and ancient draughts, of the rhythms of Gula, the sacred month for Newar Buddhists, when the valley's youth climb this hill in the monsoon rain, circumambulating the stupa with drums. Through these stories, the Kathmandu Valley speaks not only about itself, but about South Asia, about how people, deities, and landscape shape one another. What happens when we take the valley and its important religious sites as our lens, as a place that thinks and feels on its own terms? The emergence of the lotus from the lake that was the Kathmandu Valley attracted many Buddhists and Bodhisattvas across the ages who came pilgrimage to site to worship it. Eventually, wanting to approach the lotus, the Bodhisattva Manjushree, armed with his flaming sword of wisdom, came to the lake and decided to drain it by cutting gorges in Chobhar and Kodwal. The water drained, and mystical beings who dwelled in the lake, especially Nagas, snake beings, became unhappy about becoming unhoused. In order to quell their anger, the Bodhisattva arranged for them to be relocated to other lakes, such as Taudaha, and even kept a small pond at Swayambhu Hill known as Nagpur, where these snakes associated with wealth and prosperity are worshipped until today. After these events, the Bodhisattva Manjushree is said to have retired with his two wives on the western side of the hill, in a place known today as Manjushree Hill. This smaller adjoining hillock contains a shrine dedicated to Bodhisattva and is specially worshipped by Newar Buddhists in January-February during the occasion of Sri Panchami, a day dedicated to goddesses of knowledge and learning, Saraswati. While Buddhists worship Manjushree at the site, Hindus also visit on this day worshipping the goddess Saraswati at the same place. To this day, there's a vibrant tradition of students wishing for good grades and parents bringing their children with speech impediments to the site, showing how Bodhisattva Manjushree act of draining the lake is remembered as a story of the creation of Kathmandu Valley, and also simultaneously structures contemporary practices where understanding clears away the waters of ignorance. However, as we see today, the beautiful lotus that is said to have attracted numerous Buddhas and Bodhisattvas didn't remain visible. As the ages passed and the world entered the Kali Yuga, a time when dharma would wane, Santikaracharya, an important figure in the development of Tantric traditions in Kathmandu Valley, feared that the radiant light of the self-arisen lotus might no longer endure. To preserve it for future generations, he concealed the radiant lotus within stone and brick, enclosing it inside a great chaitya so that its brilliance would remain protected even as the world declined. Around it, he established 5 temples dedicated to elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and sky. Yet, as the story goes, not all were pleased with this undertaking. While Santikaracharya was in final stage of establishing the Chaitya, the placing of the golden pinnacle, known as Gajura, a fierce goddess named Harati, once a child-snatching demoness, stood in his way. The temple dedicated to the goddess Harati, which attracts the biggest number of devotees out of any site on the hill, sits adjacent to the Chaitya. At the time of construction, it is said that despite all the support provided by deities, every morning the Tantric master Santikaracharya would wake up to find that the pinnacle of the Chaitya had been meshed with overnight, causing it to become slanted and preventing the completion of the work. Eventually, he learned that this was the work of Harati, a demoness turned goddess who, after meeting the Buddha, abandoned her child-eating ways and became the protectress of children under the age of 12, and of Buddhism itself in Kathmandu Valley. After negotiating with the goddess, she eventually agreed to the construction and the work proceeded uninterrupted. Having fulfilled this work, the Tantric master withdrew into deep meditation within the shrine now known as Shantipur. There, in the innermost chamber of the complex, he is said to remain to this day, not dead, but immersed in samadhi, in a space believed to connect directly to the luminous heart of Swayambhu itself. Historically, entry into these innermost chambers was reserved for the Malla kings, who would perform secret rituals during times of extreme drought. It is said that within the chamber there are special plates written in the blood of Nagas, and when these were retrieved and presented to the sun, it was said that their power could summon rain, and restore balance to the parched valley below. Today, only the head of community of Newar Buddhist caretakers of the site, known as Buddhacharya, can enter up to a certain point to perform secret rituals in one of the inner chambers. Swayambhu is, in fact, a Baha, a Newar Buddhist monastery, albeit an atypical example. The ritual caretakers of the sites are a caste group known as Buddhacharya, a branch of high caste Buddhist Shakyas. The Buddhacharyas are in charge of performing all the daily rituals at all the important sites on the hill. This includes the ritual inside the temple of goddess Harati and the daily worship of the image of Amitabha Buddha, the Khwapadya, or the principal deity of this monastery, and a host of other images that needs to be worshipped. To the right of the Harati temple, there is a small courtyard which houses Swayambhu Bahi, another type of Newar Buddhist monastery. Unfortunately, this one now stands in a disarray since the community has died out some years ago, and therefore no one is able to perform the daily worship required. Radiance reaches far beyond the Kathmandu Valley. Pilgrims from across South Asia, from the plains of India to the high plateaus of Tibet, journeyed here to pay homage to self-arisen light. Yet, what makes Swayambhu especially remarkable is not only the devotion it inspired abroad, but how, through storytelling, Newar Buddhists of the valley drew the vast cosmology of Buddhism into their own landscape. In their retellings, the great events of Buddhist time, the appearance of Buddhas and spread of Dharma were not distant occurrences, but moments that unfolded here, among the hills, rivers, and people of the valley itself. Through these stories, the Kathmandu Valley became both a center and a mirror of the Buddhist world, a place where awakening was self-arisen. Swayambhu is not just a monument of stone and story. It is alive. Its visit, its telling adds another thread to its fabric. These are some of the stories as we have heard them. Stories that speak of deities and humans, of lake drained and light concealed, of devotion, protection, and renewal. Yet there are always other tellings, other memories, other ways of knowing this hill. What stories have you heard about this place? Of its deities, its people, its origins? Share them in the comments below, because it is through these many voices that a place like Swayambhu continues to be made and remade.